Welcome to the Trauma Recovery Coaching Summit, our first annual summit, and it's sponsored by the International Association of Trauma Recovery Coaching. I'm Bobby Parrish, the Executive Director of the association.
And I'm Sarah Parrish, the Deputy Manager.
We're so happy to have you here. We want to just give you 5 days filled with information about trauma recovery, and then trauma recovery coaching. We do want to give you a heads up. Some of this information may be triggering, so please use your best self-care while you are listening to any of these videos.
Thank you, Bobby. So today we have the absolute honour to welcome Linda Meredith. And Linda is come here to tell you today to talk about neurobiology of reclaiming my authentic self. Hi, Linda. How are you doing?
I'm really, really good. Thanks, ladies. It's great to be here with you this morning. It's exciting.
It's super exciting. I can't wait. So start us off. How did you begin your recovery journey?
Well, as you can tell from the accent, I'm Australian, and we don't actually have the big culture of recovery that America does. But for me, to quantify it, so to be, let's just say a few decades ago, I wanted to know why I felt this great big hole inside of me that ached. It was almost like this physical ache that I had no words for, no language. And so I began to look for opportunities to learn. And of course, coming from a childhood where and I had no language for this, where there was toxic families generationally, and there were, keep it secret, keep it safe, we don't talk about anything, and the sexual abuse and the lack of nurturing, and just the whole pile of things that I didn't even know or understand then. I just simply had to take the one next step to find information. And I was really fortunate to come across John Bradshaw's work. I don't know if people will remember him or not. And also Pia Melody's work. And that's really odd for Australia because back then we didn't have internet. And, it almost sounds like we're in the dark ages now, doesn't it? We've lived through the dark ages. But I found a lady who knew about them. And so I was able to watch his videos and learn about the family structure and what it was like to be the first child, because I'm the eldest child, and what the dynamics were of that, what the dynamics were about, my parents even, and relationships. And it was just like my whole world opened up then. And then the pursuit was on, like, I've got to learn more, I've got to understand more. And once I began that recovery journey, the ache began to go away as well. So I was so appreciative of this lady that, it's almost like saying, oh, down in the backwoods of Australia, I happened across a lady who actually used the work from America, which even at that time, he was considered a pioneer. Well, he still is considered a pioneer in this area of work, as was and is Pia Melody as well, on the codependent side of things. So that was just an amazing, it was like opening up a door and this gold mine was there just waiting to be mined. Yeah. So that's how I began.
So how did you become aware of the impact of trauma on your family history?
For me, my family history has always been something that was prevalent or right at the forefront of my mind, because one of the things that used to get said to me as a kid was, oh, you're fifth generation Australian on both sides of the family. So I was a very deep thinker as a kid. So I'd sit back and I'd think, wow, all 5 generations have come, collided right at this moment in time, and here I am. But because of the sexual abuse, which I did repress, but it made me a great observer of people and of life. So I used to look back at my family even at a really young age, and I'd see all the divorces, okay, and that's not something that got spoken about at all, but so many generations of my family before me were divorced. So I came out of my family going, oh, look, the last thing I want to ever do is be divorced, because you don't want to put your kids in it, right? Because you know when you come through that it is so heartbreaking, gut-wrenching, mind-blowing, painful, and you think, oh, I would never want to do that to my kids. So I actually was aware, long before I ever picked up a book, that there was generational trauma and dysfunction happening in my family. So to then grow up and be able to begin to put language around what was happening, and things like, I have a brother who's close in age to me, and I could see down the male lines of my family. Now, even today with the neurobiology that we've got, and we know about the mums and how the cortisol crosses the placenta and changes DNA, things like that. But we don't know scientifically the whole impact of the male line. But I could see from the male line in my family that there was this incredible chance that my brother, because he's fifth generation as well, that he would become an alcoholic, or at least not alcoholic, a functioning alcoholic, but he would have challenges with addiction. And he does have that. So it was all, for me, it was like seeing it all have gone before me, but where do I go from here? Where am I going to take it from here? Because there's no way on God's green earth I wanted this passed down to my kids, okay? So I felt really, really passionate about that. Yeah, so it's been a lot of years of being aware of it and not having any science to back it up until really recent times.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely see, you know, the generations and how much, you know, how each generation affects the next generation and the next generation, sort of thing. So
Yeah,
it's so interesting. It's unbelievable. But how has that impacted your mental health, though, Linda?
well, for me, I went through a lot of my life of, you know, people say, you know, you're a strong person. Well, life molds you in a way that you don't have a choice. It's either stand up and get on with it. And I'm very much that nature. Okay, we've got a problem, let's solve it. And I would do that quietly, but for me that was so unhealthy, that when I had my first child, it took me 5 months to go to the doctor and say, I've got postnatal depression, and it was the first known mental health part of my journey. And he just sat there looking at me, and his words were, you? No way. And that's exactly how strong we are, because we hide it all, because we've just got to get on with what we've got to get on with, because as kids there was no other option, just get on with it. And definitely we've come from generations of get up and get on with it. You know, don't ask questions, just get on with it. And so my doctor, who'd known me for a number of years, was like, no, you know. And when I explained to him what was going on, he was like, well, yeah, okay. So that was the first part. And then I didn't have it after my other 2 children, because I started doing the inner work, my personal awareness work. But what happened is when things began to get out of control in my life, as in the stress became epic proportions, like marriage problems, you know, angry husband not addressing his issues, then he got cancer, and so on and so on, the depression was back full on. And then by the time I had a second marriage, I actually lost the feeling of not being safe and the overwhelming stress of holding on to so much stress for so many years, raising 3 kids on the spectrum, and we didn't know that I was as well, and so on. I lost all cognitive function. So there was a trigger that just tipped my brain over the edge and just shut down. And of course, we had no language, no science back then when this happened. So I was just treated symptomatically, and doctors basically overdosed me. And I was bedridden for 2.5 years, needed a full-time carer. What else? Yeah, couldn't walk on my own, couldn't talk, couldn't do anything, had no memory left, nothing. It was all gone, basically. I lost everything. So it affected my mental health significantly.
Yes, and your physical health. That's probably one of the most significant cases of trauma shutting someone down that I've ever heard.
Yeah, I've listened to a number of experts about it, and I don't think they've even fully quantified yet. Like, they've got the idea of what happens with the breathing, they've understood the possibility, but they haven't come out full. I haven't found anywhere yet that's come out fully and said this actually, it will shut you down, you will lose your life, you'll be bedridden for 2.5 years until you work out how you can work your way through to even get up and walk again. Yeah.
Well, that reminds me of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the shutdown, and how given, if the shock continues, if the trauma continues, it will lead to your body shutting down.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened. I was in a situation where I realised that the person I'd married had not executed 100% integrity in their motivations for marriage, and it just shut, the stress of that just literally shut me down. So I went into having migraines that 30 milligrams of morphine every 3rd day wouldn't touch.
Wow.
And so then began the doctors addressing things with medication. And actually, when I was 15, I developed epilepsy, and they had no idea why. It's not in my family. But that year, my brother and I left home to go and live with the other parent, and 3 months after that, the stress of doing that actually is what will have brought it on. Yeah, so it's impacted my health significantly all the way.
Well, obviously, you have made a significant recovery. How did that happen? Tell me how you reclaimed your life.
One day at a time. I realised that the doctors weren't going to help me. My then husband wanted me to sue the doctors, and I understand why, the neurologist, because I started having grand mal seizures that I have never had in my life, ever. And I understand why he felt that way, but I also knew that with the legal process, it'd take 5 years, and I would have to stay the same like this for 5 years to sue the medical people that were involved. And I went, you know what? I need that 5 years to start to become well. So I said no. And my faith at the time, obviously I wasn't leaving bed. At the time I went, okay, let's do this, right? And so I still have a very distinct memory of the day I made it up and down my hallway 4 times. So I used to walk out to the computer, and because I couldn't talk, I'd get on Facebook, and it was my saving grace, because I had years of information, and I'd go into a secret group for abuse, and I'd just help people. And it helped me regain language because I could take my time to think about the word. And if I didn't know the word I wanted, I'd sit there with the thesaurus and go, okay, let's look at it. And then I'd go, oh yeah, that's that word. And so the day I actually made it up and down the hallway 4 times, like I'd get up, go back to bed, get up, go back to bed, because I couldn't stay awake. I was like, yes, I can do this. You know, I was like, I'm going to make it through. But it's the same analogy of, if I'd known how long it would take, I would have just given up beforehand, because it has taken years to get me back on track. Yeah.
Wow.
And functioning. Yeah.
Wow.
You know, just even down to memory. I take my kids through a drive-through, and as we say in Australia, Macca's, but you call it Mickey D's. I don't know what you call it in America, in England, Sarah.
Yeah, Mickey D's, McDonald's, yeah.
Yeah, well, in Australia it's Macca's. So I'd take them through Macca's, and I'd have to say to them, you need to give me your order when I get to the screen and do it one at a time. And now I'm like, okay, beforehand, everyone's order, and bang, do it. So it's been a long, slow road. Man, I managed to study and do a counselling diploma along the way, even though I didn't think I could, but I did it. But I did brain training every day on the computer as well, you know, so every time I needed to do the one next step, I'd also do the one next thing to keep getting well.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about you, Linda, is that you're just eager to learn and get the knowledge and just the research out there, you know, to help you, you know, and just, you know, now for the science research is out there, you know, yeah. How has that impacted your recovery, just knowing that information?
Oh, look, when I did my trauma coaching and Bobby brought up the neurobiology, I was like this sponge that went, oh my goodness, this is the final piece of information I need to be able to heal. And as I learned more and more about the brain and the neurobiology and what was going on, for me, I was able to say, oh my goodness, if my amygdala and my prefrontal cortex aren't connected while I'm triggered, and I'm not able to make my emotions logical and in an order, then I need to be able to do something to fix that. And so I sat down and I thought about, how am I going to make that happen? And then I brought into all the different factors that come into play to make that happen in our brain, like to rewire our brain, to make sure that we're not going to get triggered, you know, because back in the prehistoric part of our brain, that trigger, the fear trigger, developed in our childhood. So where somebody who hasn't experienced trauma, every time a problem presents itself, their first response is, this is manageable. Whereas our first response is, oh, you know, oh my goodness, fear. And that's not something that we think as adults. It's something that comes straight from the brain, yes. Deepest parts of the brain. And I went, so how am I going to get the deepest part of my brain, my amygdala, the whole limbic system, and my prefrontal cortex to stay connected so that I can get focused, so my brain can focus and my mind. And I went, I need to do some sort of movement at home because then I'm safe. I'm safe at home. Yes. And if I get triggered, I'm safe at home. So lots of work went into it beforehand, but that's when I started to develop trauma-informed movement so that my mind would focus on my breath. And having your breath slow down, we really need our breath slowing down so that we get more oxygen in. And as we get more oxygen in and we're moving our body slowly but consistently, our actual brain then goes, oh, wait, I'm connected. Because we're moving our body consistently, the prefrontal cortex has to be engaged. We can't do order without it. And I went, oh, wow. And so I've been doing this and getting my whole system changed around internally.
Wow.
And my ability to focus and manage and keep on track and manage time as well is all just growing exponentially. Yeah. So
That's
for me, it's
amazing.
the key.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. So you've learned all of this. Tell me how you apply that to your coaching work and you're working with your clients.
When I'm working with my clients, I have the ability to see what strategies they need to put in place in their day-to-day life. So what we're doing is, by using the neurobiology information, we now begin to put strategies and structure into place, which as they experience that strategy and structure, they're then able to go, right, I've had that experience, and my brain, without even thinking, we're rewiring our brains that I'm safe to keep having these experiences. And as they do this, what I'm finding is it's so effective to their recovery that when they move more effectively into closer to remission all the time. Yeah, so clients are now saying, because of this and the individualized strategies,
Yeah.
you know, one of my clients who would go out in public and just break down, like the trigger would go off and they would break down and just be terrified and panicking, has now had over 2 weeks free of any of that and is back out in life. You know, and it's just, and this is somebody who'd had a complete breakdown at work, hadn't been able to work, and had been with a therapist for over 2 years. And within a matter of around 10 weeks of working with me, they experienced their first 2 weeks of being able to be out there and getting on with their life. And now they're actually able to start talking about when they can go back to work.
Yes.
And it's just, it just gives you the feels, and it's like, I'm so proud of them, of the work they're doing and reclaiming their life and getting their life back on track.
Yes. And we're so proud of you and the work that by your journey, you learned what you needed to know, and you found a way then to take that information and apply it to other trauma survivors who need that help.
Yeah. I don't really think of that very often. I just don't want anyone else to suffer the way I did. No one, you know, I just have this driving passion, leave no stone unturned.
Yeah. You know, I think as all of us being trauma survivors, almost universally, I encounter us feeling that way. I don't want anybody to go through what I went through, especially if they're from a generation, you know, in my generation, there was no discussion of trauma.
No.
In my grad program, I didn't learn anything about trauma.
No,
and yet here we are now going, you know what, we need this.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
And we need to be the first generation that stands up and says, you know, instead of saying, oh, nobody understands me, you know, nobody's listening, we need to be the ones that stand up and say, hey, I'll get you the information. It's here now, and I need your help. Will you walk this path with me? Will you read the information and take it on board? And I want to be well. I want to be in my relationship and whole. And it's so encouraging, the people that are coming to me that are in relationships and their significant other is then saying, right, let's do this together. And as we all know, that's where we get our primary healing from, is in relationships, because it's the interpersonal relationship that caused it in the first place.
Yes, exactly. Linda, it has been so amazing to talk to you today. You have such a wealth of information. So for those people who are viewing this video and going, she's amazing, I want to talk to her, where do they find you?
Pretty easy. Just go on to my website, lindameredith.org, or head over to Facebook and Google Linda Meredith, or even if you're on Facebook and people just put in PTSD and they find me. That's how clients have been finding me. They get on Facebook and they put in PTSD and then bang, because I've got a lot of videos up as well.
That's fantastic. It's been an absolute joy to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and it's been such a treasure to share with all of you. It really is.
Yes, and I said to everyone just before we started taping, each one of us is on a different continent.
We are.
And it is absolutely amazing to me how that works and how we have the internet to make that possible, and how that means that, Linda, you can work with people anywhere in the world that has internet.
Yeah, absolutely. I work with people on 3 continents. So I work with people from here, from Australia. I work with people in the US and in the UK as well. So, and it's just, we live in the best time ever, as far as I'm concerned, information-wise, you know, internet-wise, friends-wise. It's just amazing. Thanks, girls.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Linda, for today and coming along and talking to us all. I just hope that all the viewers are really enjoying the summit, and we will all see you soon again on another video. But until now, take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.